One San Antonio area landlord is mowing lawns because she can't pay her bills because her tenants aren't paying rent and they're protected by the eviction moratorium. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. What would you do to save your properties? I'll tell you what, I'd do a lot of things. I'd sell, I'd go get a second job, work overtime, etc., hoping that things will get better eventually. And in the case of this landlord here, she went out of her way to go mow lawns to help pay her bills just because her tenants aren't paying. Now, this isn't the way things are supposed to be happening, okay? It should be the tenants that are out there working second jobs, working overtime, doing whatever it takes to make sure that their bills are paid. But instead, it's, put on the landlord that we should be the low-income housing provider. We should be the homeless shelter for all these people, and we just can't do it. And this is the ultimate result. So before I get into this article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below, and I'll work to keep bringing you great articles about the eviction moratorium and other news that's of interest to landlords. So this article, it comes to us from news4sanantonio.com, and it says, landlord's debt spirals out of control after renters refuse to apply for rental assistance. Okay, yeah, I've gone over it before. If the renters aren't willing to participate in the rental assistance programs, in most places, the landlord can't do anything about it. They can't collect anything from the government. So the problem with that is that the eviction moratorium still applies for those tenants and we can't get rid of them. And so you're just stuck in this kind of limbo of, I can't get paid rent, I'm not approved for the rental assistance, so I have to keep these people in my property and I have to pay all their bills for them. I am now the homeless shelter. But let's see what the article says about it. San Antonio. A local landlord has turned to troubleshooters desperate for help. The CDC recently extended the moratorium that prevents landlords from evicting tenants who can't pay rent through the end of July. The financial safety net was intended to help Americans through the pandemic, but it has had some unintended consequences. Local landlord Catherine Esposito said one of her tenants moved out and left her with a $1,900 utility bill and $3,600 in unpaid rent, leaving her on the hook after he lived rent-free for more than 6 months during the pandemic. Well, at least the rent was cheap. I mean, I know that's no consolation for the landlord, but I've heard cases of, tenants leaving the landlord 10, 15, 20,000 plus in debt, okay? So this tenant, obviously 6 months of not paying, they owe $3,600 total, so the rent was $600 a month. And the good thing is the tenant is gone. However, the problem is that with the tenant gone, now how are you supposed to collect that rent that the tenant owes you? And that's what this lady is talking about right here. Plus, it looks like the tenant left a $1,900 utility bill. And in a lot of jurisdictions, the utility bill is attached to the property, not to the renter. So she could end up having to pay that as well, just if she wants to be able to have, utilities in that house again. And so I know some utilities even will throw a lien on your house if you have an unpaid utility bill. So yeah, I mean, she's really got to take care of that as well. I mean, this is a bad situation, especially for landlords who aren't, owning a lot of properties, who don't have a ton of emergency reserves. This can just knock you out. And in this lady's case, it sounds like she's just a small landlord, and this is really, really hurting her. Esposito tried to get him to apply for rent assistance through the Texas Rent Relief Program, but said he is unwilling to do his part and doesn't even return her calls. I'm trying to hang on to my properties, Esposito said. Her financial situation has become more dire by the day because she has a renter in the same quadplex, she said, left her owing $7,200 and a family of 5 in rental arrears, totaling $17,000 in unpaid rent. Yeah, so she has multiple tenants who aren't paying, and they all owe her something, and now $17,000 total. So yeah, it's a bad situation to be put in, And I definitely, I feel for this lady. I hope that she's able to do something about it. Maybe the tenants who are currently still in her unit who owe her, she can get rental assistance for them. But who knows? I mean, they did not set these programs up with the landlord in mind. They set them up with the tenant in mind, and not realizing that the major player, the major people who have the most to lose are the landlords, okay? Tears streamed down Esposito's face as she explained how unfair it is that tenants are getting a break while the property owners are going deeper into debt. In addition to her full-time job, she has taken on odd jobs like mowing lawns just to pay the bills. Yeah, so you got a landlord out there mowing lawns just to pay the bills for tenants who are getting by rent-free. Now, she isn't getting any kind of break on her bills, but so she has to work her full-time job and then get off of work and get her lawnmower and then go and, try to make a little bit of extra money so that her tenants can stay in their units for free. Is that what they intended with this eviction moratorium? Because that is completely ridiculous. It's not even fathomable that anybody would think this is fair. It's not fair. And in my opinion, it's not constitutional either, okay? And I can't believe the Supreme Court is even letting this go on. I can't believe that any of this is being allowed to happen. So, yeah, I mean, this is a crazy story, but this is happening all over the country. This is happening in every state. And Texas is known as not being a super, tenant-friendly state compared to the East and West Coast large cities. So it's hard to believe that every state you're having these same issues, okay? That's why the government should not be in the landlord business. We need to keep the government out of our hair, and we need to be allowed to operate in the free market like all the other businesses. Real estate attorney Todd Taylor said there are ways to evict the tenants, even during a moratorium. If a lease is nearing the end, a landlord can choose not to renew, giving the tenant notice to vacate. Lease violations like intentional damage or unauthorized pets are also not protected by the moratorium. Taylor explained that it is possible to evict a non-paying tenant during the moratorium if they are not actively seeking available rental assistance, as was the case with two of Esposito's tenants. So, yeah, if they aren't actually applying for rental assistance, then you can push forward with trying to get them evicted. So, I mean, that's nice and all, but all they got to do is just throw in a simple application, whether they qualify for it or not, and then you can't get rid of them. And not only that, but what it said in this other paragraph is you can just choose not to renew their lease. Well, that means that you have to eat all those months until their lease actually expires before you can say, well, you don't want to renew the lease. And then what do they do if they just decide not to go? Well, then you still have to take them to court, and you still have to remove them through that process. And I know that in some places the courts just, they're not even looking at cases right now. So who knows if this is even a reasonable way to get a tenant out of your building or your house. So let me finish this article up. Taylor said the rent relief program does take a couple of months to process, but if you have the time, it is a good program that benefits both the tenant and the landlord, as long as both are willing to be part of the application process. Yeah, and that's the problem with this lady right here. The tenant wasn't willing to participate in the application process. And then the other issue is it takes a couple of months to process. So rather than getting that money to the landlord as quickly as possible, you're waiting for months on end to get the payout. So yeah, that rental assistance isn't what people think it is. It's not some we filled out the application a week or maybe 2 weeks later, everybody was getting paid and I was able to keep the tenant in the property. No, it's we filled out the application, we jumped through hoop after hoop, we came back, we refilled out another application, we did this and that, and then 4 months later, we found out we were missing this, and then we had to fill out another application, and then finally we were able to get, 60 to 80% of what I was owed. And then I wasn't able to evict that tenant for at least, a year after that. And you see, all the stipulations and all the stuff they put on that rental assistance makes landlords not even want to deal with it. They just eat the loss, and I don't blame them. So bad situation this lady's put in, out there mowing grass in order to pay these other people's bills. But do what you have to do to make sure that you can keep your properties and that you don't go into any kind of financial distress.